Try copying and pasting it. Bob said that I'll send out a different, Bob also said that it wasn't hyperlinked for some reason.
Technology.
So I will send another, oh, here we go. I will send another email
I can text her the one you.
and make sure that it's, okay, Wendy, Pelletier.net. Here's this. I will double click
Yeah,
this.
I just wrote down pellet.
Okay. Okay. All right. And I'm going to send it. Let's see. Zoom link. Send. That one definitely is hyperlinked. You should be able to click on it.
Did we lose Sam too?
Yeah, she's having a linking problem. She got the email, but like mine, I had to cut and paste the address.
No, Brian's here.
Yeah, but Denise said hers was linked, so she's clicked on it.
Yeah. Sorry to do this to you again. Yes, and I see, yeah, and I see no message about 40 minutes right now. So, okay. Yep. Bye.
She got it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
oh, yay, Wendy.
I'm back. I'm back.
Wendy, serious apologies to you for that second time. Won't happen again, trust me.
That's all right.
Well, let's not make promises we can't keep because
Right.
that's at the beginning.
Well, the worst case, we'll meet in the damn conference room and get it done effectively. But anyhow, that's
There, I won't disappear from the conference room.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of fun team building though, right?
It is. It is. Now we're on to item E, which is an item that Mike had added, which is a recommendation to create a digital directory for the board of directors meeting. Mike, do you want to explain that one?
Sure. This is it's a proposal to eliminate the hard copy binder, basically the paperwork side of it. What I'm proposing is to provide a digital USB, a flash drive or a thumb drive that'll be preloaded with all of the information board members would need. Personnel policy, fee schedules, all of that stuff. And then each month when we submit the board packet, that packet could be saved into this directory and sort of eliminate the hard copy side of things. I wanted to canvass the board members, see if there's any interest, and if we want to move forward with this, then we can do so.
Mike, I guess my first question on that is I understand the hard drive, the flash drive, but I just heard you say something about the packets for a meeting getting into that flash drive.
So we email the board packet that has the agenda and all the minutes and all of that.
Yep.
Well, you could then save that into this directory, so you could have a full directory of a history of all of the meetings and moving forward. So it would eliminate the hard copy version. I don't know how many people here are actually printing out paper, putting it into their packets to save, and then putting it on a shelf. I know I personally do not.
Well, I think I don't either, but historically, just as a point of history, I think when we had live meetings up until this present time, Beth always brought copies, hard copies, and that's where the binder thing was being maintained. However, that doesn't suggest, by the way, I would suggest it, or it doesn't have to be a flash drive. You can save that same packet on your computer.
Sure.
Right? I mean, it could be.
Yeah, you absolutely could. I just wanted to replace it with something, to have something.
Well, basically what you're asking is to abandon the binder and go electronic.
Exactly.
All right, board member comments? Allison.
I'm definitely in support of that, although I think it has been helpful in the past. What Beth sort of has done in putting everything in front of us that we should kind of be responsible for. And I think that's kind of serves as a nice reminder of like, okay, these are the basic documents, but that could easily be done electronically. It would be nice. I mean, really everything that we have is a public document anyway. So just having all of that on an online storage system is would be fine for me too. But different people might want different
Yeah.
adaptations, but
Other comments, board? Denise?
That's fine. I've never gotten any paper, so.
Yeah. Sharon?
Yeah, anytime we can move, any committees can move to a paperless environment, I think we're doing the right thing. I wonder what Beth feels about that. She's been doing it for quite a while. Obviously, Allison has touched on a good point. It's a reminder and something to be responsible for, and it's tough. A lot of times people can't sit in front of a computer, but they do have time to read the document, you know.
right.
And you bring up a great point, and that's why I brought this up, to weigh that option between the members. I do see Beth put a lot of work into that, whereas she's very much a paper person, where I'm more of a digital person. So I thought it was a good opportunity to bring this up with the board.
Sure.
Figure it out.
Beth, you want to comment on what you think about the topic?
I think that, people make notes and stuff when they're using, more at the meetings. I don't know where they go after that, but the only other thing that I would say is if we have handouts at the meeting, because sometimes we get committee notes or whatever, that we get a copy of that in the office so that we can then distribute it after the meeting to everybody. Sometimes we don't always have enough copies if something comes up
Right,
like that, or somebody has a handout that's come to speak to us.
right.
I'm even trying to get them, so they're in the history. I of course will probably keep one paper document
Sure.
file in the office.
Sure.
But I think it's doable. And if somebody really wanted to one printed out, we could print it out and then come by and pick it up,
Right.
because we like visitors. So
Right. Brian?
I guess I'm a 50-50 on this. I see good things both ways. I think sometimes having hard documents at an in-person meeting is helpful, particularly if things come in at the last minute, and it's helpful to have that right in front of you as opposed to having to bring a laptop with you every time or try to read it off your phone. So, there's good and bad.
Sure.
I don't need a binder, but occasionally hard copies. I mean, obviously our meetings, our select board meetings, our town administrator always has prepared for each select board person hard copies. We've already mostly seen the documents via email electronically beforehand. And most of us obviously don't, there's no redundancy in printing things out.
Right.
But anyway, I'm good either way.
Okay.
I'm adaptable.
Thanks, Brian. David?
I'm all right either way. I'm still ancient. I like to draw circles and arrows on things, and my computer screen really doesn't like me doing that.
Right.
It doesn't erase well.
Right. Okay, Wendy, any comments?
Yes. It would be a new learning curve to have a thumb drive. What I normally do is I open the PDF and I just have my iPad here with all the information that is sent, and I look at that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so I can perhaps figure it out.
Yeah,
That's the way you go.
we all operate differently, and I honestly believe the day of well, first of all, we've been challenged with that. That's probably what brought to Mike's mind, because we haven't had live meetings. We've been meeting electronically, obviously, so that hasn't happened. I'm not a hard copy person because, if I can open it on my iPhone, if I want to open the packet while we're having a meeting. So I prefer the electronic route because I think it's smarter, easier, and more efficient. If I get hard copies of stuff, I only lose it anyway. The back of my car is stacked with paper from various meetings and stuff. But if we're in this mode, we really need to think electronic. That's kind of a requirement. We don't have hard copies unless you want to print them out at home. If we get back to live, we do have the option. Allison, you have another comment?
I mean, could we just do it on an as requested basis? I know for Camden, generally I'm all digital, but there are some times when we're going to be looking at budgets or this, and I say, Audra, can you print me off a copy of the
Yep.
packet? And the town has a good system for doing that, just like Beth does. All we would have to do is say, hey, Beth, can you print this off for this time? Or sometimes when we're going over the budget and we're all in the same room, it does,
Yeah.
all of us trying to be on digital devices might not work. So you'd have, you know, in those instances, you'd have hard copies available, I would think.
Mike,
You brought up a good point, Bob, that we've been doing this digitally. I've yet to gone to a personal board meeting. Does the facility have the ability to project this on a screen that we could all share and see? It's kind of key to this
Sure.
idea.
it does. It does, but to some people's comments, they can't make, we won't let them make notes on our screen, obviously. But
No.
that's the only, I think I hear people saying they'd like to write notes and before the meeting or, but you know, the problem I have is we're receiving these packets in hard copy at the meeting. You didn't have them before the meeting, and I need to do my homework before the meeting. So I pop up the PDF and I read the packet and go through it. And yeah, I'll make some notes on the side if I have notes to be made. That's what I've always seen, a bit of inefficiency and why I lean towards the electronic distribution. We could do, you know, both, but I think it gets complicated. We have to figure out who wants hard copy, who wants electronic. We need to go one way or the other to keep it.
Is it
simple.
Beth would be doing it? Who would be
Yes,
preparing
yes.
that?
That's what.
It would be up to her. She would have to say how she feels about the complications and if she's the one.
I don't think it's a complication because I do the package anyway on Fridays and make it a PDF. But I think that Allison's point about certain meetings, we might want a hard packet. You know, if you're doing the draft budget, we're probably going to want to have something to make notes on and look at, you know, so that you're following along. And it's a little easier to do, I think. But I'm not sure. I think it's doable. I just, most of the package, what I've done is asked you to move from binder to binder, those formal documents that are in the back anyway, you know, so our, you know, union contract, our employee handbook, I'm trying not to make those every year. You guys are you are responsible for putting them in the next binder. And then also I do try when I do the package to make it two-sided as I can. So
well,
I try to save paper, but it is a lot of paper.
It is a lot of paper and I
Yeah.
agree with you, there's some, and there are times when you need hard copy, yeah, I get that, but there are exceptions, not the rule. And also, some of the things, we always refer to interlocal agreement, bylaws and stuff like that. It'd be much simpler, from my perspective, if I had it on a flash drive, I could just pop on it and don't have to go fumbling through my computer to try to find where I stored it, because I do have them on the computer. That would be my preference, but again, the board has to decide. Is there anybody that is adamantly wants to see the hard copy? I'm not hearing that.
Well, I think we can all ask for it, right? When we want, there's
Of
nobody
course,
has
of
to give up
course.
anything.
Of course, you can always ask for a hard copy. Of course you can, but as a policy, what Mike is recommending, and I'm not hearing anybody adamant against it, we would do the electronic, and anybody wants a hard copy, it's fine.
You could also just print it yourself. I mean, you could hit print.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can.
Sometimes they're like 30 pages. Like,
Yeah, well, the problem is if you're at home or whatever, and my printer's not that fast right here. And if you want to print it out downtown Camden, somebody can do it and it goes like that. So if anybody wants a hard copy, request same in advance of Beth. If you're okay with the electronic, the policy will be electronic going forward. And we should do it on a flash drive basis.
I mean, flash drives, it doesn't really matter if it's on a flash drive or it's on a,
Well, yes,
I don't want a
reason-
flash drive. Like, don't go to the trouble of creating me a flash drive,
okay.
but put it on, you know, all of these basic things should be available on the website or
Yep.
upon request. It would be a waste to buy
Okay.
flash drives and give them to me, but I think we can
Okay.
all,
my thought was is not everyone has a select board computer or something they can use because we don't offer a computer like you have with select board. So I didn't know, and some towns don't have, I don't know if you all have one like Wendy, do you get them? No.
I just
right?
use my personal computer. I guess
Lincolnville doesn't even have emails yet. So
Right.
I didn't know. And that's why we suggested a USB.
Yeah, I think
Mike did.
USBs, but you know what? We'll go electronic, and anybody that wants a flash drive, request it with Beth. How's that? Anybody wants at any point in time, wants a hard copy, request it at Beth. Deal? Sound good?
Works for me.
All right, good. Let's move on to Finance Committee report. Basically, the recommendation for auditing service. Allison, do you want to lead that one?
Sure. I mean, this is largely a matter of preference. The Finance Committee discussed this over email. We have, we received 3 responses to the RFP. The lowest cost one was our current auditor. Let me maybe pull that up.
Sure.
That was, I think, 5,500 a year.
Mhm.
Then we also had Brewer, was it Brewer and Associates or Brewer?
WB Brewer, WH Brewer.
Um,
Brewer.
so they were around 9,500.
Mhm.
And then there was another response, which I think is actually was that who used to do us? Is that BTR? So anyway, there was a very wide, basically a very wide range of costs. And there was considerable discussion about the value of, or whether there is value to kind of rotating auditors every so often. It had been the feeling of the Finance Committee before, back when Deb was on the committee, and with some of the discussions that we had had, that there, there had been certain frustrations with our current auditor that, may have been them, or may have been us, or may have been just personality differences, or too much intertwining with Camden, or since Camden does do our accounting, and we were also using the same auditor as Camden, I think some of us felt that there might be some value in there being a little bit of a separation in terms of like a check and balance. If we're going to use Camden for accounting, maybe we don't use the same auditor as Camden. Then Deb did some research about just sort of like good governance from a governance perspective of how, and the thought is, and some of the research seems to show that things are improved by changing auditors every so often, as kind of just like a check and balance. Eventually, after sort of going back and forth about various things, the, I think, unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee was that we go with Brewer. Brewer is also the auditor for the town of Hope, if I understand correctly. And I think recently now, and Wendy said that they had good experiences there. I think, is that also the new auditor for Rockport?
Yep, and Bill has worked with them and speaks highly
And
of.
so, yeah, I think we all agreed that any one of the firms that responded was capable of doing the work.
Mhm.
But we can talk about this for however long anybody wants to. But we
the
came down
recommendation-
on the side of going with the middle cost recommendation, and with Brewer sort of right in the middle. It's a little bit more than is budgeted right now by about, we had increased that line slightly, or actually, no, it ended up being a decrease. There was one year when we budgeted a bunch more for auditor services because we thought we might need to do additional. But this, for this year, I think we have a little bit less budgeted than would be Brewer's annual fee, but we were not so concerned about that as to make us change the recommendation.
Yeah, it was only
Go ahead.
$1,300.
What's that?
It was $1,300 over budget.
Yeah.
The Brewer quote.
Okay, director questions?
What was the previous cost what was, say, last year's cost for the auditor? Did you say, you said the new bid that was what it was last year?
Yep, that's the same as the bid from what is it, RHR.
Okay, so you're talking about a 70 to 80% increase in cost of auditing from one year to the next.
Sound like $4,000
Yep,
increase. Yep,
by choosing to go, by choosing to go with somebody different.
right.
And have there been any problems with the previous auditor specifically?
Yes. But I mean, it's a matter, I don't want to disparage them. I think that maybe Camden's going to continue with them. We had a lot of frustrations with, and we could, this is a lengthier conversation, but there, a couple years back, their assessment of our financial position was pretty alarmist. There are some complications in the way that because of we're not a municipality, we're a corporation, but we're quasi-municipal corporation. So the way that they want to discuss our position is not in terms of like we do in our municipalities, where we say, well, what's the balance in the unassigned fund, for example. They want to talk about us like a corporation, which refers to a net position. And that looks at, so they would say, okay, well, you guys are, your net position is $4 million in the red. Well, that's because they've accounted for what they determined to be the depreciation of the landfill and all of these sort of complicating factors. What was very frustrating to me as the treasurer working with them is that there's been this sort of disagreement about whether we have enough money saved up for the closure of the landfill.
Right.
And as all of us know, each of the decision that was made is that a lot of the money that came back from PERC went back to the towns. And so each of our 4 towns holds that money in some kind of restricted reserve fund for the purpose of landfill closure. Now that's money that's held by the towns and not money that's held by Midco Solid Waste, but it's the actual liability for closing the landfill does rest with the towns. It's not, it's a joint liability that is ultimately the towns, and the towns sort of pass that on to Midco Solid Waste. But the way that they're writing, even though RHR is the auditor for Camden and Rockport, or was the auditor for Camden and Rockport, they were consistently saying that none of the towns had there was any evidence to show that we had saved money for the purpose of landfill closure. And so we did a bunch of stuff to redefine the way that was talked about. And then and we made progress last year and came to a determination. And then again this year, what was very frustrating to me was to see them send back a draft that said Camden and Rockport have zero money set aside for this purpose, and they should know better for Camden and Rockport because they were our auditor. And so there were things like that kept coming up. And when we asked, like during the budget process, when it was really important for us to know what is basically, how much cash do we have on hand? What is our anticipated unassigned fund balance at the end of the year so that we can budget for next year? They are just continuing to talk about it in terms of net position, which isn't helpful. There are some of the auditor stuff is just checking a box, and it's just saying, okay, well, we've done this and we've fulfilled this requirement, but there are actual times when we need information from them. And I've just found that they haven't been extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's also frustrating because I don't know how much you want me to go
No,
on about this.
I think there have been issues. I think to Brian's good question. I don't think we should look at it necessarily as the $4,000 percentage you mentioned. That's what it is. My experience has been with auditors, especially with small entities like Midco Solid Waste. The lower the cost is, you think you're getting a deal, you're walking into trouble, because some of the things from my perspective, they did were kind of get it off the desk, kind of failing to me, rather than spending the time to do it correctly, and that takes more man hours, it takes more money. That's very common.
It was getting rolled in sometimes with Camden. I feel like we're maybe getting a really good deal because they're like, oh, well, so Jody, for example, Jody is the finance director for the town of Camden, and that's her role, of course, to be to be doing all of this with the auditor. For Midco Solid Waste, she doesn't hold that position. She's just the accountant. She's not, as you know, she's not in any of our meetings. She's not seeing what the votes are. But since the auditing firm is already communicating with Jody so much to do Camden, I feel like Camden ends up being the first priority to get that all done, and then Midco Solid Waste,
Yeah.
a little bit of an afterthought. Like, can I prove that? No, I mean, and obviously I'm not anti-Camden, but it feels like we weren't always getting the best quality service for
So,
that deal.
any other comments from directors on the recommendation of the finance committee?
Yeah, I'll follow up with why a 3-year contract as opposed to a 1-year contract? Is it a better price? I know with Bill Brewer, we've had him for quite a long time. Our school system uses him as well, and we go year to year with him. We've never actually even talked about a 3-year. Did he offer a different rate if it was a 3-year, or what's the idea behind that? Given that if you're unhappy with the current one, how do you know you're not going to be even more unhappy with Bill Brewer? Even though I'm telling you we've had good luck, that really means nothing. That's just my opinion or the town's opinion so
Yep.
far.
Yep.
But
Good.
going
Great
forward,
question. And maybe Mike I personally, my preference would probably be to do a 1-year. I think maybe the 3 years is just like, that's sort of been the habit. Mike, did you see in there, are they willing to do a 1-year contract?
Yes, they did give a single year bid option. It's the same price. It's the same price.
Okay.
that they before
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I would agree with Brian. The 1-year option is always smart. You're trying a new saddle. You might as well test it out for a while.
Right.
Even
Exactly.
though I'm sure they're great, but yeah, there's no real incentive to go to 3 years.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
let's go for
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments, directors? Denise, Karen, no?
I agree.
I think we can move to a motion for the selection here. Somebody want to make a motion?
I would make the motion to go with Bill Brewer for 1 year of
Okay.
auditing services.
I'll second.
Second by Dave, discussion. Roll call vote, Denise,
Yes,
Karen,
Yes,
Wendy,
Absolutely.
David,
Yes,
Allison,
Yes.
and Bob. Yes, and Brian.
Yes.
Okay, we're clear on that one. Great. Sounds like so let's move on to the more heady discussion of the strategic and capital planning committee report, which is really a follow-on from the last meeting where we had the discussion on the situation with our solid waste option. Just Brian, this is the literally 2-minute capsule. We started this analysis back in probably March to look at what the options were for Midco Solid Waste for the year beginning July 1st of 2021. We did canvas at that time, call it Fiberite, PERC, EcoMaine, a current provider through next June 30th, and who else was in, Crossroads. Well, obviously since that time there's been some changes with Fiberite. We all know what's going on there, and we did some refinement and got some proposals from basically EcoMaine. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike. EcoMaine, PERC, Crossroads. Obviously nothing from Fiberite at this point in time. And the second, we can pull up the matrix we have, which is the spreadsheet for the summary of those. Since that time, since the last board meeting, the board was leaning towards the Crossroads or waste management, and we agreed to do some little bit more kicking of the tires, as it were, and auditing, as it were. And we did have, it was last week, Allison, we went last week ago, Monday, I think it was. There was Dave Barrows, myself, Allison, Mike, Dave St. Laurent, who was the current Camden Public Works Director, but used to be the Rockland landfill director. Went to kick the tires on the site itself and visit with waste management to have a discussion. That's been completed. But maybe, Mike, if you could pull up the summary sheet for everybody's drawer as a reminder of what we were looking at for the bids that can be considered at this point in time.
Sure, I can pull that up, or Allison, I did just email it to you a little bit ago.
Okay.
Posting it, it's easier.
Which page do you want, Mike?
Here, I'll open it here.
Well, the bottom line is the page to look at, really.
Let's see. Share screen.
Thank you. This, by the way, Brian, this was in our packet last time. And
There it is.
Bottom line.
yeah, there it is.
That's the breakdown.
Hold on. Yeah.
And Brian, just for your information, this is MSW cost and also including transportation. So this is
Yeah.
a very comprehensive spreadsheet with lots of data that's broken down into just the basic anticipated cost per year.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, clearly, there are two separate options from each of Crossroads Waste Management and EcoMaine, our current facility that we're using. There are some other subsets of EcoMaine, which were included a single sort and kind of a hybrid option. The bottom one, it's called RCW, which is basically us packaging stuff here in Camden Rockport and Rockport and sending it down to, or them picking it up and taking it to EcoMaine. But you can see from the numbers here, again, it does include hauling, the differences in the various years going out. And clearly, if you're looking at a cost-only model or perspective, Crossroads clearly has an advantage from a cost perspective. PERC, unfortunately, because of their situation as bid to us, it was really as it says here, gate rate, which so it basically says they could change it on a moment's notice if they wanted to. And of course, the other ones are getting what 70%, I believe, of the stuff that was going to coastal or fiberite is going directly to PERC right now. But yeah, this is a summary of the numbers, and we had the discussion, and the discussion doesn't consider the long-term, short-term kind of thing. As I said originally, fiberite or coastal was on the list with some interesting options for single stream, etc. The big difference is, besides price, is of course EcoMaine is a facility where they are combusting our solid waste, and Crossroads is basically a very efficient landfill. It does do some gas extraction, but is not doing incineration of the solid waste. I'm certainly appreciating comments from those of you who visited Crossroads, Mike, Allison, Dave Barrows, about your perceptions of waste management Crossroads from that visit. Mike, do you want to lead that?
Sure. I found their staff extremely knowledgeable about what was going on. They knew the market. They knew, I guess, to lead that off, we had their operational manager there. We had the engineer. We had their PR guy, and we got to meet the guy who ran the methane extraction as well. They all knew the facility very well. They took pride in the facility. I don't know about you guys, but I thought the place was exceptionally clean. They did a very good job of managing that. The landfill itself was very well managed, I thought. Their leachate collection system, I mean, they appeared to be on the ball with every aspect and every question that we threw at them. They have an answer for.
Yep. Allison, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, as everyone knows, I had kind of gotten to the point where I could support this as an option because it's certainly the lowest thing on the waste hierarchy, and it's not something we should be striving for. Due to the capacity crisis that we have in Maine, the reality is that some waste in Maine is going to go to landfills no matter what. And sort of wherever we go, it's going to, even if we choose something that is more expensive and a little higher up in the hierarchy, it is possibly going to push some of that waste to go to a landfill. So if our concern is environmental benefit, it's very, very difficult to point to anything that has a strong environmental benefit at this point. When I went to the landfill, I agree with everything that Mike said, that it was very, in terms of landfills, it was very well run. They were doing everything in a, in as best as can possibly be expected in terms of following the minimum that they sort of need to do. There's nothing wrong with them, but I did find I think it's going to be very hard for me to pitch that to the community, given without coupling that with something that we're going to do to create that environmental benefit. The last time that we went through this discussion with all 4 towns, there was broad consensus that it was worth it to pay more to do what is, perceived to be right for the environment. Not all of us agreed on what was right, but they don't even do, I was disappointed to see that they don't even do any kind of metal extraction, or it's really everything you send there just goes and gets buried, and it's very much the cheapest option. But if for me to feel good about it and to advocate for it and vote for it, I would want to see us take the opportunity to save some money by going to Crossroads, but then also take a little bit of the money that we're saving and use that to do something positive and geared toward waste reduction. Just based on what I know about how people reacted to the last thing. So
Right.
also, the MRC, I would like slightly take issue with this table, because we could still join on with the MRC, which is that coalition of 160 or so towns.
Allison, you're absolutely right. And there's other tabs on this spreadsheet that do identify that. I mean, we looked at those numbers, but what those numbers incorporated was long year contracts. The reason when the strategic committee met, we had decided to limit that to a shorter term contract due to the instability of the market right now.
Right.
Nobody knows where fiberite's going to go.
Right.
Nobody knows how the market's going to be in more than 3 years from now. So the consensus was to stick it to, or keep it to 3 to 5 years in the ballpark range.
Well,
I mean, in 5 years is kind of highly questionable whether that would even be.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what we were talking about.
right. And I think to clarify though, we also have to understand the situation we're in right now. And I know Eco Maine mentioned again to me today that their proposals are good for a certain amount of time. If we decide not to make a decision now on what we know here, then we're in the process of whatever these proposals we've gotten have to be revisited, because their duration for keeping the prices as well as expired, unless you of course involved in a serious negotiation with one single party. They may continue to hold those prices, but the risk obviously we run is, will Crossroads, will these others be the same prices 3 or 4 months from now? Well, you can use your dice and my dice. So that's fundamentally where we're at this point in time. The strategic committee basically has recommended the strategic planning committee the Crossroads option because of the uncertainties with MRC. We don't know if they would. They haven't got an operator yet. They haven't got an investor yet. We could be talking numerous months. I mean, I have no idea before this could be, characterized. And like I said, right now, all the landfill is being diverted to principally to Perk. I think it's about 70%, and the rest, some going to Crossroads, some going to other places. But I'd like to hear from the other board members who haven't been so up to their knees in this one. I know if Dave wants to add anything, he was on the tour also. But Kern, Dave, Denise, Brian, Wendy, any comments?
Our decision, I'd just like to say that our decision for out of the strategic and capital planning committee did not come easy. There was a lot of research in that, and I know Mike spent a significant amount of time in that, but it just makes sense considering the problems in the market. Obviously, we want a long contract and we want to do the right thing for the environment. But, and Allison, I agree with what you believe in. I really do. But the market isn't there now. It's huge. It was tough. It was very tough, and we knew that there would be pushback, and we knew that there would be people that aren't really on board with that. And I know in our towns, once this gets rolled out, we're gonna have conversations. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
Looking forward to it, but
There's
we are.
still
Oh, yeah. Yep, I have to agree. I obviously, Allison is one of her great studied passions in life is this area, so I respect seriously her opinions, and I think she's right about the idea of taking a short-term breath with Crossroads, and perhaps looking at the differentials we might be spending and taking some small piece of that to work into what can we do to plan for the next step in advance of the next step. I think, but that's a discussion for another meeting, but I agree with that approach.
And are there options? I mean, it seems to me that the transfer station now does a wonderful job of trying to pull out as much stuff as it can
Right.
as to what would ultimately go to this facility, but maybe
Right.
there's more we can do with that. I mean, to me, food waste is a huge thing that I don't think really gets, I mean, I know we've got scrap dogs, but I don't know how
Right.
many of those yellow bags are full of people's kitchen trash.
Yeah, well, I assume it's probably quite a bit. You're right. That's where some of this, as Allison will talk to about how we can help to make that an even better situation. Our annual tonnage is what, Mike, 5,500 tons?
Yeah, roughly that, 55 to
500 tons of stuff, and if you can do a 10% reduction, that's huge. Allison, go ahead.
I mean, because the other thing that we probably should keep in mind is that one of the reasons we chose EcoMaine before is because of the educational offerings that they have. And I know that some of our schools have taken advantage of the grant program
Mhm.
and the educational opportunities. I don't think that it's anything that can't be replicated, but it may come as a disappointment or a surprise to all of a sudden not be part of the EcoMaine community and have that option taken away from the schools. So one possible thing that we could do is we've previously had discussions on this board about funding like a part-time education and outreach person.
Mhm.
I know Mike's got all kinds of stuff.
I know, Alice, you see me smirking over here because we
Which is, you know,
talked about my public education and training center idea. So
Right, and some of the ideas with like the small engine stuff that you've thought of, Mike. So it's not just the MSW stuff. There are like lawnmowers that end up in our scrap metal all the time that could be fixed. And if we could put a little bit of the resources that we save by not trucking all of our stuff to EcoMaine and try to prop up some of those programs to, there could be education around recycling and, education around reuse and repurposing. So that's like one possible compromise I could see between okay, we're going to save a ton of money by not going to EcoMaine, but then make some of those services, educational opportunities available locally, maybe.
education is going to be the key to make it
Yes.
work with the
Yes.
public. I agree with that 100%.
Right.
And like Allison mentioned, I've got a couple ideas kicking around that I'm working on that hopefully roll out this year, and we would be ready well in advance of any switch if we go to a different facility.
Right. So we have these options you just saw. The recommendation remains Crossroads Waste Management 3-year deal. They did come back with just a modest revision to their proposal that they will include in the contract the 2 1-year extensions if we so desire, but that's frankly going to be a discussion has to be mutually agreed. So it's not a hell of a carrot, frankly, but it's at least it's there if we wanted to go a little bit longer with them.
Yeah. And Bob, those interest rates remain the same too. If
They
we-
do. The
There's no-
4.5% escalator remains the same, or with the longer deal, it was 3%, but that's the deal, the two deals that were on the table. So anyway, we've gone around this thing for probably, let's see, March, April, May, June, July, August, for about 5 or 6 months, analyzing this, and we're at a decision point. We either can go ahead with a recommendation here, or we can continue to wait, and it's not recommended by the committee. To Kern's point, we think honestly that would be Russian roulette, given where the market is right now. And it's almost, well, I shouldn't say it's impossible, nothing's impossible, but that the odds of higher prices later are much higher than the other way around. That's where we're at.
I guess
So-
I didn't see anything on the agenda saying that we were actually making a decision on that. I do think, part of me feels like we at least needed to put it on the agenda, like approval of, contract with
Well,
Crossroads, so that
Okay, if
that's
you-
kind of the
Well-
public's alert system to
I-
be able to provide comments. So I feel marginally uncomfortable voting on that, since we don't even, in our packet, we don't have the contract to look at. But I probably should have said something earlier about
Yes.
that. I
Well,
thought it was going to be a conversation.
no, the intent was,
Well-
we talked about last time in the last meeting that we were going to bring this information for decision to this meeting when it was in the packet. But Dave, you had a comment?
Just that, on the thing here, it says a recommendation for a contract. That to me means that we want, asking us if we feel comfortable to make a decision, not think about it a little bit more.
Agree.
I mean, that's my interpretation of that.
And that was it. That
My
was-
opinion, my opinion from listening to all this, I firmly believe that I would much rather would have spent more money for a longer time and gone down to Echo Maine. But with what's going on with the economy, what's going on with everything, what we don't know is going to be happening, I think a 5-year contract with Crossroads would be the best move to make right now. And I'd be in favor of making a motion for that.
Do I take that as a motion?
Uh,
I will make that as a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'd have a second.
Wendy? Discussion, Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, so 5 years, I definitely can't support, but
Right. I heard you say 3
I
years.
just haven't read is the contract available somewhere for us to read?
I don't know, Mike,
I can
Who
send,
has read the contract? I guess I just,
well, first of all, just because it's not a contract we need to sign tomorrow. There has to be negotiation
Right.
with attorney representation to make sure we're only approving, not signing a contract, we're approving the completion and negotiation of a contract with this entity, period. So getting into whether or not the indemnity clause is right now or the certain wording is right, that's not appropriate at this point in time. We'll bring the contract back.
so
for
we still
discussion.
so there's still one more chance to vote no, or
Want to change the contract, not to vote no, to change the contract.
like,
Approval
just,
to move
how do
in.
we get out of it? Can we get out of it early if we want? What happens if we want to get out of it early?
If you sign a 3-year contract, I doubt they're gonna let you out early. But that can be discussed with them certainly, but I don't think they're gonna allow that. David?
I made the motion on the 5-year contract primarily because
Oh,
favor going to another idea as soon as we can, but with what's going on with everything, I can't see as any decision with Fiberite or any of the other ones is going to be solved, working and guaranteed in
Okay.
anything less than 5 years.
okay, I mistook your motion. That's how it was for 3.
I made the motion for 5.
Okay, Wendy, that was your approval, was 5?
Yes, but Brian had, I think, a question or a comment.
I've got a question. A point of clarity. What we're voting on currently would be what we would be taking back to our towns, correct? And ultimately, they would be the ones voting on who we go to, or this is all up to us?
All up to us.
Okay.
Although Yeah,
Yes, but
and
okay.
the reason that it's been determined that we most likely have the authority to recommend and to approve a 3-year contract. But anything longer than that would most certainly have to go back to all of the towns.
Oh, that, I think that's still an open question in my mind.
It
but
is an open.
It's an open question because, and the reason is because if you're an owner of a company, you don't typically legally have the right to use your own company's policies and procedures and enforce them on a separate corporation. I've never seen that, but I'm not the expert. I just think there's a question that has to be answered. But this is more toward, I think there is a question about 5 years. So Camden has a restriction on it in its charter about number of years. Whether it applies or not, I'm not sure. But I'm sorry, I thought, Dave, your motion, but that's fine. Motion was for 5. Wendy, seconded for 5. Discussion on the 5-year option. I personally can tell you I'm not comfortable with 5 years. I think 3 years is smarter, given the hope that the market will change in the not too distant future, and committing to that long time period with this option might go down more difficult, more difficult a sales job to our towns. That's just the way I feel about it. Any other comments about the motion?
Well, I've got another question. What's the total cost difference between 5 and 3? Mike?
Let's see, about $50,000.
50
50
Per year?
total?
Per
So-
year?
total. So year 5, I'm looking at the spreadsheet that Allison had up. Year 5, 782. With the 3-year option, that's assuming we do a 2-year extension to get it to 5. And then you look at the 5-year option, I think it was 738. Quick math. All right, my math might be off a little bit, but
That doesn't make sense. Could we put that?
44.
Up again?
Sorry.
No, I think that's an average.
It
Oh.
is.
column O. It's using the 4.5% at $65 a ton with the, it does assume that our waste that we send down remains the same over the next
Right.
5 years, but that
Can we
makes,
put the spreadsheet up again.
but that's numbers, and we can drill down into those numbers if we want to get into the.
No, the 50,000 number doesn't ring correct to me. Just a second, there it is. Okay, so to the question you're asking, Brian, is you can see
Okay.
here, the difference in prices from
Mhm.
the year 5 is $130,000 higher than year 1. Is that the question you're asking, Brian? You can see the year-to-year differences. The difference between a 3-year and the first year is only $50-something thousand. That's correct. But if you go to 5 years, you're out to $130,000.
Well, wait a minute, I'm reading.
I don't see it that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same year 1, slightly.
I see basically less than 50,000 on year 5.
Right.
It's 20,000 year 3.
Mhm.
know,
Presumably something between 20 and
9,000 year 2, and basically it's obviously the first year is the same,
Right.
is the way
Yeah.
I read it.
Yeah, the difference, the two, obviously, one has a 3% escalator and one obviously has a 4.5%. So you're right. I'm just trying to drill into what is your question again, Brian? What are you looking for, the difference per year or the difference in?
No, I was looking for the total. I guess by going to if we went to a 5-year, what is the savings as opposed to a 3-year? And
I see.
there is.
I see. You'd have to do a cumulative calculation on each year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So year 1, 0. In year 2, it's $10,000. In year 3, it's
You'd have to add those. Yep.
20. And year 4 is not on here.
Right.
So that's another calculation you have to do. Probably the same with
Which is
year 5.
right.
So it's probably $100,000.
Okay. Not 50.
Right.
I don't think it's 50, no.
Yeah.
Year 4 is not on here.
No, because it's already 50 for year 5.
Exactly. 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 Yeah, so year 4 is going to be up there too. So really to me, the big difference between the 3 and the 5, besides, by the way, this 4.5% escalator is not small. That's pretty good size. I prefer the 3%, obviously, but the difference is how long does the board feel we should commit to one landfill option? And this comes down to what you feel about where other options may be in 3 years, which is not a very long time.
Mhm.
That's all. That's my only comment.
Okay.
Allison?
I mean, I would also say that there's a pretty significant legal question here about our authority to do this. And what we've consistently been told is that when municipalities enter into an interlocal agreement, that the interlocal agreement cannot give powers to the newly formed corporation that are not already held by the members of the organization. So that's where we've gotten into this thing where we have to go back to the
Electorate.
right. And so there's language in there about 3 years. If it's already a little bit murky, but previously it had been determined that everything did need to go back to the voters and that we could get around it by doing a 3-year contract with a municipal organization. If one thing we can do, like with the auditors and stuff, we have what's it called, an appropriation clause or a non-appropriation clause.
Yep.
In the contract where it says that if the money isn't approved in the budget, that the contract, there's a way to get out of the contract. But I do think it gets pretty dicey if you read the interlocal agreement to read that and to think that we have the authority to do this 5-year contract without
Good point.
asking our towns. I'm not prepared to defend
Yeah,
that.
we don't, what we're really looking for here is a commitment to Crossroads principally. If we can commit to Crossroads, period, we can caveat it with a preference for 5 with clarification required, or we have to go to the 3 if there's a situation with the 5. Because basically, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know any one of these entities, as long as you're into sole negotiation with them, they're going to hold their price for you until we can spend a couple of weeks finding out about the 5 versus 3 option.
Correct. Yep, that is true.
Does that make sense? I agree. I'm not pretending to be an expert in the 5 versus 3, and if it has to go to electorate, that's another whole issue. We can still do that too, but you're not going to do that until next June.
Bob,
You don't have the time to get a packet together to get to the November election.
Bob,
Yep. Dave?
I went for 5 primarily for the simple reason that
Understood.
it takes too long. It takes too long to get all this stuff together and lined up, and that gives us more time to make a better choice and make a better and get our feet
Yep.
together and make a better end result. If it's going to
Okay.
create, with Wendy's approval, if it's going to create a smoother flow for everything, although and we don't have to go to multiple town meetings to do this, I would withdraw that and change it to a 3 if Wendy's willing to approve with me.
I would second then your motion to at least do a 3-year, because as we've been saying, and as Bob had commented, that we need to give them some assurance, and we have to make a decision at least on the place that the contract, the company that we'll be signing with. So I think it's important to at least nail that part down.
Any further discussion on this option, this motion then at 3?
Do we know yet if Crossroads would entertain a 3-year with 2 1-year extensions?
They have offered that to us, the 2 1-year extensions. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong again, but I believe those 2 1-year extensions were just to be an agreed upon rate kind of a thing. There's nothing, basically the 4.5% would still apply, for example, if we went to a year of 4 and 5.
Correct. Yep.
So
That's
what they
the
said.
number we show, the 782. We've made our own 4.5% projection.
That's correct.
Yes.
Of 5 years, yep.
Why is the accelerate, why is that so much? I mean, you look at EcoMaine and you know, they start us at 781 for a 1 year. And is that our own projections out to the 839?
839.
So
Is
what
that-
I. what
That's
I
only
did
like,
With those, the EcoMaine contracts offer the standard CPI, Consumer Price Index increases. So what I did is I went back and took the average of 5 years and applied that
Okay.
CPI. So that was an average that I used to calculate out these numbers.
Right.
okay.
As
And
we all
the
know.
4.5% is awfully high for
It is.
anything
It
like.
it is.
inflation.
There's no question. And I'm sure part of the reason is because they're starting so low.
Right.
It's $65 a ton
Okay.
versus.
So it's just
April,
how they
May.
have to make their money, whether they,
There you go. There you go. Pay me now, pay me later. I think that's part of that thinking. But I think we can,
okay.
know,
So
we-
the 3-year makes sense to me.
if the, yeah, okay. Then we should go for a roll call vote. And if you want to do that, Denise,
Yes.
and could I get this screen unshared, Allison, please?
Sharing.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Denise, Kern,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Allison,
Uh,
I know, and Mike Corny.
I kind of want to be like Susan Collins and like vote no and be able to say like, I voted against the landfill. No, I won't do that because I think everybody's come to a good
Okay.
place. So yes.
It'll be, myself also, yes, I think it's a smart move. Now, that doesn't preclude that we could still, and put that motion passed, we can still do some homework about the governance question about the 5 years. So I think there's no reason why we need to clarify that.
Yeah.
And I think we should do that in parallel no matter what, because as we go through this process with Crossroads, I can assure you, if we were to, in the next few weeks, clarify this, presuming it's non-electorate required, we could always bring it back and modify it to the 5 year, if the board wants to consider that.
I would vote no to that, but
Okay, that's fine. I'm not suggesting we vote on it now, but I think we need to clarify that one. That's been fuzzy too long, frankly. There's no reason for that. But with that, we'll move on. And thank you very much. This has been, as Corinne suggested, a gut-wrenching 5 months of trying to analyze this thing with all the gyrations. But anyway, we're there. Financials and comments to financials are in the packet. Does anybody have any comments? Allison, you want to make any comments about them?
Just
it
one
looks like
thing,
Mike
Bob,
is excited.
before we
Yes.
move on, I just want to tell Brian that sort of an apology for not sending that spreadsheet out. I know the other board members have got it. I will forward it to you, and it has all of the information that we just went over. So if you have any questions on any of those numbers, feel free to give me a call and we can go over it. Just so you're
Okay.
more comfortable with all the numbers and what we just decided. on.
Okay. Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Sorry, Allison, did you have something you want to say?
No, nothing beyond.
Well, I mean, it does, the financials are just what, 2 months, Allison, as I saw, there not a lot of data there, but we try to get them in there every month just to see how we're tracking, and we'll know better in a few months how that's kind of going right now, but I didn't.
Bad with wastewater. I mean, if we want to get into like just
Right.
commenting on things, but
Right.
mean-
right.
First quarter, I think you'll be very
right,
pleased
it's,
the next
we're
quarter.
catching up. We were catching up.
It rained in 4 months, so we should do okay on our leachate bill. on this.
Right. And now if everybody saw in the manager's report, now that the leachate levels are down, you know,
Yes.
98 is where they really need to be. This is kind of what I was obsessed about before. And Mike has just done a terrific job of monitoring that, getting it down to really comfortable levels. And like he said, we've been able to leave the pump off some now. So
That was good news. very
that's
good
it's really nice to see that being managed so well. So thanks for that.
Great. Well, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
I
moved.
move to adjourn.
Second.
Second motion made and seconded, roll call, Denise.
Yes.
Mr. Kern, Vice
Yeah.
Chair,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
uh, Brian,
Yes.
and Allison, yes. And yes. Thank you very much. And Brian, I'm sorry I had to drag you into this first meeting with a heady decision like this solid waste thing, but it's been lingering for a long time. I know you didn't
I'm
have-
used to these, I'm used to these sort of things. This is-
I know you for after 9 years, you better be.
Hey, well, you may be reading about some more stuff soon, so.
Okay. Thanks for all your input, Brian. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
See you on the
Everyone.
next meeting.
Thank you. All
Right.
right.
Right, night,
Right.
Night.
night, night,
Night.
night, night.
Sleep tight.
Oh my,
She can't find the button.
stop live stream.
Leave.